Hello everyone and welcome to Slash Film Daily for February 19th, 2018. My name is Ben Pearson. I'm the senior writer at slashfilm.com, and today is President's Day, so the news out there is pretty slow. So instead of trying to put together a show where we talk about some of the scraps of news that are floating around, we figured we'd talk about the thing that everyone seems to be talking about right now, which is Marvel Studios' Black Panther. A couple weeks ago, I had the chance to interview co-writer and director Ryan Coogler, as well as actor Andy Serkis, about the work that they did in the film. There are a couple spoilers in here, but nothing too bad. I assume most of you listening to this have probably seen the movie at this point, but if you're very spoiler-averse, I would say maybe just save this one, come back to it after you get a chance to see the film, which obviously we would all highly, highly recommend. And yeah, so today we're just going to present those two interviews. I'll throw up our conversation with Ryan Coogler first, and then we'll transition into Andy Serkis after that. This first interview was actually recorded on a balcony in a hotel in Beverly Hills, so please forgive any ambient noises you may hear in the background. So without further ado, here's my interview with Black Panther co-writer-director Ryan Coogler. All right, so let's just jump right in.
Okay.
Why don't you tell me about the process of getting this job? I know that directors often make like visual sizzle reels to send in. Did you do something like that for this movie?
No.
Okay.
Nah, I didn't make a sizzle reel. Frankly, I didn't have time to. You know, if I could, I was just finishing making my last film, Creed. You know, when I got involved in talks with Nate Moore initially, and then I went in to meet Kevin Feige, Louis D'Esposito, and eventually Victoria Alonso. You know, and I was like, you know, Creed hadn't come out yet, but I had finished it. You know, so I was prepping for getting ready to do press and all that good stuff. And you know, and we were talking, and I was, you know, really interested in how they worked as a studio. I heard things about it, but you know, I wanted to get it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. You know, and you know, was asking, you know, I asked honest questions, and they asked me questions about, you know, about me and my process, and you know, and everything that I was hearing was making me excited. You know, and the more I spent time with them, the more I felt like, oh yeah, I could work with these guys, man. You know, I could spend some time around these guys and learn from them. You know, and I think they could challenge me as collaborators. You know, I thought it would be a good idea to get going. You know, all I had was a movie. I had a movie that I had just finished. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think that was helpful. You know.
Yeah, movie's awesome.
No, right. Oh, thank you.
Tell me a little bit about melding the character of Shuri from what she is in the comics into sort of a female Q character.
I mean, the idea for that, you know, started when I sat down with Marvel, and they said, man, we see this as an opportunity to be, you know, our universe's version of James Bond. So as soon as they said that, it was something that I hadn't thought of about Black Panther, you know, as much as I was familiar with the characters. And I just thought that was just flat out fantastic, man, because I love James Bond. You know, I love James Bond movies. I think they're really cool. I haven't seen all of them, but the ones that I've seen, you know, I love Casino Royale, man. I thought that was just brilliant, and just the idea of like what for some reason it just clicked in my head when they said that. It made me very excited, and I'm always impressed by creative people who thought of something that I haven't thought of. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's nothing that bums you out more than hearing an idea and it was like, oh yeah, I was thinking that. Right. You know what I mean? But when you sit down with somebody and they say an idea and you like, whoa, you know, I didn't see that coming. You know. Yeah. And that was what kind of happened in that meeting. And going through the process of writing the film. You know, working with my co-writer Joe Robert Cole, you know, I thought Shuri would be just like a cool Q. You know what I mean? I thought it would be really interesting in seeing a young you know, African teenager, you know, who's manipulated this element in the ways that nobody else could. Yeah. And who's confident, you know, and able to have her own space, and in our minds, Wakanda's a place that looks at age differently than other places. You know what I mean? It's not a place where, because you're young, you don't get a chance to lead. You know what I mean? And because you're old, we don't cast you aside. You know what I mean? Like it's a more of an African looking at time and age in the African sense. you know, and then I also thought that, you know, as we were writing, I realized that, oh yeah, like the more stuff that we can put in this relationship between T'Challa and his sister, the better off we'll be, because that's another thing that makes him so unique. Like there are no superheroes that I can think of that have a little sister.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like who they love dearly and who can bring out the best in them, but also keep them down to earth. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And that relationship is built on love.
Mm-hmm.
So out of that, so many other things grew. Besides, she became so much more than just a Q.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, definitely. You've done some really incredible single shot long takes in your career.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about how the one in the casino fight came about this time.
Oh yeah, well, I kind of look at action films like musicals, you know, and this is, you know, Black Panther is definitely an action film, you know, among other things, you know, and I always thought that, you know, and I kind of learned this from working on Creed, like, you know, and I would talk to Sly about this a lot too while we were making that, and I think it was kind of advice that he gave me about like action films being kind of like musicals.
Mm-hmm.
But you know how in musicals, like the rule is in musicals, man, if we talking and our emotions swell too much, you know, we gotta sing then.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like when emotions get bigger than dialogue, it's time to sing, and then you go back to, and you get it out, and you go back to dialogue. And in a true action movie, a true fight film, it should feel like that the same way. Like we talking, but if it gets too intense, you know, we gotta fight. You know what I mean? And so each fight should feel different. Each fight should tell a different story about the character's emotions. Mm-hmm. If in my mind, I always saw Wakandans as being like people who, you know, they're noble people. You know what I mean? And ancient people. But in the comics, man, they're always people who can fight really, really good. You know what I mean? Like they're incredibly dangerous. You know, like in all of them, that's one thing that's kind of consistent. You know, it's like you don't want to fight a Wakandan, like whether it's T'Challa, whether it's any of them. Right. You know, and the casino scene for me was about Wakandans trying to hide. You know, they're trying to blend in. You know what I mean? They're trying their best not to make a scene. You know, and eventually they just can't hold it in anymore. You know, and so I wanted the way that they fought, each one of those three characters, the way that they fought to be different and to be equally impressive. You know what I mean? And T'Challa's, you know, he's a super soldier, super power guy. You know, who kind of fights like a king, like an African king, and has super strength and is doing these powerful things, and everybody's attention is probably on him. They're kind of trying to jump him, you know. And we saw Nakia as being a spy and being like craftier and grittier and grimier. You know what I mean? Kind of like Daniel Craig's James Bond, like how he's rough and you know, slams people into stuff and breaks stuff. You know, and it's kind of dirty, and he'll take your gun, and you know she's the only Wakandan that you ever see using guns. You know, with the exception of you know who, but. You know, so we show her, you know, we kind of show her fighting style, and then we wanted Okoye, who's the cream of the crop of the door, to just be doing incredible stuff. You know what I mean? It's like almost like shocking. You know, like how skilled she is with this spear and how she's taking on all these people. You know, and when I started realizing like what I wanted to do, and we had built this, you know, Hannah Beaker, our production, I had built this incredible casino. You know,
it looks like Skyfall almost.
Yeah. I mean, it's Korean style inspired, but you know, it's got a beautiful James Bondy feel. You know, and I realized, like the best way to get the feeling of like just how much ass the Wakandans kick is, you know, and how different it is, and where it's happening at, and the placement of their operation is to try to do it, you know, unbroken.
Yeah.
You know, and that's how we can kind of experience like all of these things. So that's where the idea of it came up.
That's awesome. So among many other things, this movie is at least partially about the difficult and really almost impossible choices that leaders have to make. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about just like seeding that theme into the script when you and Joe were writing it? Yeah,
I mean, it was one of those things, man. We talked, you know, Obama was president at the time, and we talked about Obama a lot, you know, in terms of like, man, it's got to be crazy difficult to be the political leader of this place, you know, and it's got to be conflict there, and we talked about, you know, in the script, specifically in the priest run, there's references to like how many tribes are in Wakanda, you know what I'm saying, and how they always don't agree, you know, and it's like a lot of pressure on T'Challa, you know, he's constantly trying to escape Wakanda and go to the States in that run, and you look at the Coast run, you know, he's constantly right there in Wakanda in the thick of it. You know, he's sitting in boardrooms and he's dealing with you know riots and all these different, you know, all this dissatisfaction with him as a ruler. You know, so we didn't want to shy away from that. In our film, he's just now taking the throne. So it's that the idea of that transition. You know what I'm saying? And what happens in that transition, and it's the idea that you're weak when you're in points of transition. So things are coming up, and you got to see what kind of choices he's going to make, how he's going to navigate these things. We wanted to make his political seat, one that is difficult. Because if it's not, then it's not as much conflict as it should be.
Right. Cool. Thanks very much, man. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. No problem.
So that was co-writer-director Ryan Coogler, and now we'll switch gears a little bit so you can listen in to my chat with actor Andy Serkis, who plays the villainous Ulysses Klaue in Black Panther. Here you go. First things first. Aside from What Is Love, what else do you think is on Ulysses Klaue's mixtape?
I think he's probably got a little bit of Janelle Monáe. He's probably got some Burt Bacharach. He's probably got some what else? He probably got a little bit of Pink Floyd. He's probably got I think he's an eclectic. I think he's a pretty eclectic.
So how did that moment come across? Was What Is Love? Was that specific song in the script, or did you guys come up with that on the day?
It was no. I'd started. There was a scene which kind of preceded that moment where he's chained and just left alone, and just as he just starts sort of tapping his feet and starts, putting up a riff, sort of setting up a riff, and I was just kind of making all these noises and singing, and then it was going to this kind of hip hop beat, and then Ryan sort of came in and said, "Why don't we try it?" So we tried a few different songs, and then What Is Love came out of that.
Very cool. How much does Marvel tell you about your character's backstory? Like, do you know, for example, if Klaue ever sold vibranium to Howard Stark earlier in the timeline? How much do they tell you?
I mean, I knew about Klaue from the comics, and so I mean Klaue from the comics is obviously slightly different to that of the movie. So I didn't want to get hung up on either versions in a way. It's sort of so it's a bit of an amalgamation, I suppose, of I pick and chose the things that I wanted to use for me as stimuli, for the character.
Right. I loved that single shot fight scene in the casino. Can you walk me through how you filmed that and what that experience was like for you?
It was an amazing week. I think it was about a week or 5 days of filming actually, where it was choreographed in chunks, in sections, and it was thrilling to be part of it. It really was. It was there was all the extras there. It was all the key players there, and the timing was absolutely crucial, because every single setup, took obviously time to, if you cut and it hadn't gone, then it was a big setup, So we rehearsed, and then it was just like having the confidence to have everyone sort of be in the moment and have freedom with it. And I really enjoyed those few days. And
the rehearsal part, was that built into that 5 days, or did it take like 5 days to actually film the scene?
It was rehearsal and then shoot.
Okay.
Rehearsal and then shoot.
So what was the most challenging part of that for you?
Well, to be fair, to be honest, rather, for me, that I didn't have the greatest technical challenges. Some of them were like Denai had obviously that stunt, which is amazing, that stunt sequence. Then there was the shot where I blow up, using the sonic disruptor, send the Black Panther flying backwards. And the stunt guy who did that, I mean, they did that for real. That is, I don't know if you really see that in the shot, but it was an amazing stunt to be part of, because this guy had the wires around him, and he literally went from kind of 20 foot up in the air right across the room.
Wow.
So that was pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Getting the timing. And that was the first time of the arm using his arm. So it was just like, in terms of the shot, how that was going to work, and working out the choreography so that it was rightly placed in the frame, and what happens to the arm when it fires, and where do you feel recoil and all of that kind of
physicality
stuff.
Of that.
That's
cool.
The size of it, how much it expands and extends.
And also, like, are you really hanging out of moving vehicles when you guys are driving around in South Korea? What was that chase scene like?
So the chase sequence, the way it was shot, in fact, was the last part of it was the first part that we shot, which is the car doing that big tumble and then coming to a screeching halt and then me falling out of it. So that was a night shoot, which kind of went on all that, and then T'Challa catching up and beating up Ulysses Klaue, which we did, so many times, and that was brutal.
Yeah,
that was brutal. And then the rest of it was on a gimbal. So the car was on a gimbal, so that you could, it could be moved in all different directions for the jumps and the flips and all of that kind of stuff. And we were strapped into the car, and then I had to lean out the window. But that was a blue screen shoot.
And that was in Atlanta.
That was in Atlanta.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'd like to ask you a very quick Star Wars question before I get back to Marvel stuff. I know that Supreme Leader Snoke was sort of seemingly set up as like this ultimate galactic villain in The Force Awakens. So I'm just curious what your reaction was the first time you read the script for The Last Jedi and realized that he was going to die in that way.
I think, look, it's Star Wars, so you never know how life, or whether life can be come back to or not. Whether you can be resuscitated or brought back. I was shocked. I was shocked. But it felt. It feels dramatically. It felt absolutely right for that moment in the film. So I didn't question it. I just think it's. It's a very, very important scene, and so I didn't question it. But I do. But. I know it's left fans feeling like that they were really searching for something there, and what I'm saying is, who knows?
Have you spoken with JJ at all about potentially coming back?
I've not sort of spoken to him about it.
I also want to congratulate you on War for the Planet of the Apes, which is one of my favorite movies last year. Just incredible work.
Thanks,
and you did such good work across that entire trilogy. I imagine that you're probably done playing Caesar at this point, but I'm wondering if you're interested or if you've had any conversations with the people at Fox about maybe potentially coming back to that franchise, either to play another character or maybe even to direct another movie in that world. What do you think about that?
Certainly, I both of those. In my mind, that would be great possibilities. That's the great thing about performance capture. You can come back and play anything else. And I love the world. I love the metaphor of talking about the human condition through the eyes of apes. I just think it's really powerful, and offers. And there are still so many more stories that can be told, and there's still a lot of chapters in the ape mythology that'll get you from where we left off to back to the 1968 version, the ascension of the apes and so on. If they were to happen, I would definitely be interested.
Cool. So Klaue is definitely a villain, and he does horrendous things, as we see in this movie, but he also has some kind of moral code. He detests hypocrisy, for example. So did you have any conversations with Ryan and Joe about Klaue's motivations heading into this movie and sort of building up on what you guys had or what you had established in Age of Ultron?
We talked about him on kind of on the moral spectrum as being someone who is, this film is about, isn't it? It's about isolationism, or it's about sharing and inclusion, and he represents the sort of the world's greatest taker. He is a consumer and a taker and a thief and steals stuff. He trades. He cares about no one. He has no empathy for anyone else. So he's like a sort of moral vacuum cleaner in a way, and that's something that we sort of discussed, that he's on the spectrum of characters in this movie. That's what he represents. So.
Very cool, awesome. All right, well, thanks very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Cool.
So there you have it. Black Panther is in theaters right now, and it's making all the money, breaking all sorts of records. I'm sure we'll be talking about that in the days to come. In the meantime, if you guys would like to read the text of these interviews, you can find both of them in the show notes and at slashfilm.com, of course. You can find more about these stories and all sorts of other stuff about Black Panther at slashfilm.com. Slashfilm Daily, this podcast, is published every weekday, bringing you the most exciting news from the world of movies and TV, as well as deeper dives into the great features that you can find at the website. You can subscribe to Slashfilm Daily on iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, and all of the popular podcast apps. And please feel free to send your feedback, questions, or comments to us at peter@slashfilm.com. Be sure to leave your name and general geographic location in those emails in case we decide to read it on the air in a future episode. And please rate and review the podcast on iTunes. Spread the word. That really helps us out a lot in the rankings and being able to get this podcast in front of more people. So that is great. You guys are awesome. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.